First thing I want to do is just announce that you and I, for the first time in almost 3 years, which is quite gobsmacking to me, we're going to run a live event again. And we did lots of these in COVID. Yeah, we did lots of them. And they were really successful. We used to have 150 people register, 200 people register. Great events. Like the crew that turned up to these events were beautiful people and gave us the opportunity to explore the human mind with a whole bunch of executives and business owners. And we're going to do it again. How are you feeling about that?
Very good. Can't wait. Especially like the ones that challenged us, not only that loved it, but the ones that gave us some
A little bit of a pre-seed. So just 30 seconds on this event because I'm going to drop a link into the comments below. Essentially, we're going to be looking at our inner technology. And so, this very much goes along with what we're going to talk about today. And, for those who attend our event on August the 8th, I'll be sending them a copy of this interview so as they can have a little bit of pre-stuff to wrestle with before they come to the event. But anyway, all of that there. We're talking about our internal technology and specifically our mind and how it leads our emotions, our physicality, and our relationships, how we show up in culture, etc., and why it may just be the most important thing in this era of artificial intelligence. And so, this is going to be a great event.
Because we're replicating it, right?
Right. And this is what we're going to get into today a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to explore it with you because anyway, there's a link below for those that want to attend and really looking forward to this one with you. So the conversation today is about exactly this. And, it stemmed from, Anita, you did a podcast with Matt Southam, is it? Matt Southam from Balanced Ambition. And, that's up on YouTube. And I'd really encourage everyone to have a look at that because it's a beautiful podcast. You did a great job as the interviewee. Matt did a great job as the interviewer and beautifully produced. So check that out if you haven't checked it out. And I watched it just to get a take on, we worked together for 3.5 years or something. And I was still really curious about your views on connection, perhaps more so than AI. But it was a really great interview. And so I'd love for us to share some of that with our audience here on LinkedIn and on YouTube as well and Facebook. And then next week, we're going to come back and we're going to do the same topic, but you're going to interview me. And I think out of these two podcasts, we'll get a lot of gold to share with the audience. And yeah, just really looking forward to it. How about you? What's alive for you?
Oh, ready. Give me the questions. What you got to ask?
You're ready. Give it to me.
The connection piece that we want to talk about. I'm curious to know what you're curious about now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm even curious as to how people frame connection. And we'll get into that in a minute because I think you could ask 10 different people, what does connection mean to them? And you'd get 10 different answers, like most things in life. And so, even at the basics, there's a lot of nuance. So I wanted to start with a really broad general frame. And please, if I get your framing wrong, please tell me. I know you will. But I think you said that, in a certain sense, AI is already replacing human connection. And we seem to be, and we seem to be in a little bit of a denial about it, or maybe even a sleepwalking into it, or whatever you like to call it. Do you want to open up by just talking into that frame a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, the way that I see it is like we're resisting something that's happening already because we don't think it should be happening. And so whether this is to do with AI or a lot of things in life, we are in constant resistance of what we're doing. And we could go back to say something like social media, mobile phones, and the amount of grief we give ourselves. Most people will give ourselves about how much we use them, yet we're using them. And it's no different with, the latest technology now is obviously the AI. So it's like it's happening. The amount of people that have contacted me before, and especially since the podcast, to go, I'm a bit embarrassed about this, but I've got to tell you, I've been using it for this, for this, for this. And, some people are telling me that they're talking to the AI all day. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, this is standard. But for other people, they're like, no, there's no way I'm going to use it. I'm not going to do it. And all of this. And then you they carry on talking and they're already using it, or they're surprised that I have this opinion of AI replacing human connection, and they're surprised, and then I hear that they're using it, and I don't really use it, right? But I can
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
access you obviously in what I work in, and then I'll hear and I'm like, but you're using it more than me, so you've got to tell me about this rather than me telling you about this. So it's already happening. Yeah, it's in process for a lot of people where they are using it every day. And why are we? Because it's a lot more
Mm.
useful to us than actual human connection. You know, who's going to give you as much information in one person as we may be getting straight up from our phone or
Mm.
our laptop or whatever we're using to access the AI? So it's like, I don't know
Yeah,
what
yeah, yeah.
the argument here. You know, maybe those people that don't use it and aren't using it, of course, but there's a lot of people
Right.
that are.
Yeah, and I love this, and the more that I thought about it while I was listening to your talk, was the more that I was agreeing with you, and we just don't realize it on the surface. And then also, the more I was kind of disagreeing with you too, and I have a slightly alternative point of view on will it replace human connection. But what I would say
Yeah,
is that when I was thinking about this, yeah, I was totally on board with your frame because I guess we use alcohol, we use drugs, we use psychedelics, we use sex. Maybe even if we want to go really extreme, like people buy sex dolls. And so, like, we use all these varieties of different
meditation as
things.
well. Let's throw that one in because it's
Meditation.
no different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
I mean,
Yeah,
saying sex dolls for an executive audience, we're breaking new ground here. But, you get the point, right? There's so many different substitutable things
yeah,
for real people.
yeah,
And so, and we've been doing this for hundreds and hundreds of years because I
yeah,
was thinking back in myself, this is not a new phenomenon. It's just that AI is the new kid on the block and everyone's excited about it. And so, you were saying like it's going through a little bit of a honeymoon phase. People are falling in love with the capabilities of the AI. Do you want to talk about that a little more?
yeah, yeah. And I think that they're falling in love with it in the sense of all the capabilities of it, as we say. They're also falling in love with it from some aspects. A lot of people I know, well, some people I know are using it from a coaching perspective as well. And they're
Mm.
getting, and I'm seeing some stuff that some people have sent through to me about that. And they are getting some real um, some lovely language around how amazing and how brilliant they are and all the rest of it. And as some of these things have been coming through, I've been going, that's really lovely. And I can hear that that's what that person needs. Sometimes I'm a bit like, where's the challenge in it? And I know, since then I have seen
Mm.
people say that they're prompting it more for challenges. But I think
Yes.
it's like with anything, if you don't prompt it to challenge and you just get all that good stuff coming through
Right.
constantly, at some point it's like being around a people pleaser constantly. A people pleaser is going to get on your nerves at some point, whether it's the AI
Mm.
people pleasing you or that in a physical human form. And this is where it comes back to with all of this. It isn't the relationship with anything like the drugs, the sex, the AI, the social media, the dating apps, the meditation, blah, blah, the person. It's not to do with the relationship with them. It's how we are in the face of whatever it is. And while we're loving it, it's a reflection of us when we're in our loving states. But at the point where the honeymoon period, like anything, can be over, we're still left with self, right? And it's the relationship with self that is the important one here, not any of those things. So we go, oh, it's the fault of the AI and my partner or my kids, or I'm always on the AI, or I'm always on the phone or the laptop and all the rest of it. And it's like, now I've got to get rid of this. We've got to hide it. We've got to not do it. But what we're missing is our relationship and not reflecting on our inner world and what's happening to us in the
Yeah,
face of
yeah,
all of
yeah.
these external things. And that's,
Oh,
yeah.
by the way, just on that, I'd love to share something with you. There's a parenting program here in Australia, and I can't remember the name of it now. But it's come to me, and they were doing a thing on screen time, and they had all the other parents in the room, like about 10 or a dozen parents, and they were looking at their kids' screen times. And they're also looking at the adult screen times. And what was really hilarious was, you get all the
Goes the
different
same.
types of yeah, yeah, they get all the different types of parents and their strategies on regulating screen time, not regulating screen time. Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? Et cetera, et cetera. And what was hilarious about the whole thing was, one of the couples, they were on their devices as the parents twice as long as the kids.
Of
And
course,
so
because you're going
one
to hide it
lady
from
was
your
on
kid,
there
but you
for
can't hide it from yourself because you never
yeah,
see.
Yeah.
But
So
that's
it's
what
like,
I
well, I'm
mean.
not gonna. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
brilliant, isn't it?
I was
Um,
with some friends the other day, and I hear this a lot where, and this is no, this is said, with compassion and a lot of love, but I was with some parents and friends the other day, and, because it's so enculturated into us, into our language, to judge our kids, and oh my God, they're always on their screens and they just want it all the time. And I just looked at them and I went, well, so are we. And people don't like
mm,
to hear that because it's like a jolt back into, as we're on our phone or laptop, probably while we're having this conversation in that moment as well. It's kind of like we're
yeah.
then potentially jolted back into the reality that all those kids are doing is doing what we do. They want it
Yes.
because they've learned from us that we want it.
Mm,
And that's what they're
right.
learning from. So they're learning from what they see, not from what we tell them, as we know. So it's like we
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
get this thing where it's like this when I say something like that, it's just the reminder it's not the kids, it's us, you
It's
know.
us. And then I would say, and we'll come to that next week. And just a couple of things for our listeners. One thing that I want to point out that Anita's introduced that I think is a valuable takeaway, and we're going to talk about it at our August 8 event. The one thing that AI is great at is it's great at pattern matching. And, it's been fed a huge amount of knowledge and information, way more than any human being can really take in a lifetime. And so that's its competitive advantage versus humans, let's say. One thing that it doesn't have is context. And so, what we're going to talk about at our event is how context is now king, queen, court jester, and everything. And so, what you just shared with the audience is so true. The quality of the output is dependent on the quality of the input, i.e., the context or the prompt that you give it. And, I see AI engineers and Sam Altman and, these various people going around talking about, well, we won't even need to prompt it in the future.
I totally
And you know
understand
what?
that.
And I understand that. And also I disagree with that. The AI,
It's got to progress
does
though. What is its
got to
progression?
progress.
Pick up what it's missing right
Yeah,
now, right? So I don't know. Is it
right.
disagree?
And
I don't know.
and and so in at this moment, and probably for the next year or so, we don't know what the future is going to be, of course, and I don't want to claim that's the case. Context is where it's at. Using
What do
the
you mean by
tools.
context? Do you want to just explain what you're saying?
So, for example, if I lobbed up onto ChatGPT or Claude, I use Claude more. I think it's better than ChatGPT. No offense to ChatGPT, but
It's just your
um,
perspective.
it's just my perspective.
The AI isn't
Um,
offended, although it might get
yeah,
offended.
yeah, no, it can't get offended because apparently it's morally upright. Yeah, this is half the problem. Anyway, we're going red pills here. Um, yeah. So what is context? Well, for example, you and I have known each other, 3.5 years now, or give or take, however long it is. Yeah. And in that time, we've taken in gazillion bits of data about each other, about the environment that we're in, about the relational dynamics that we have, about, the ups and downs, the highs and lows. There's mental events, there's emotional events, there's body events, there's spiritual events. There's all of these different tapestries of a human's being. And AI just doesn't have that. And might it get there? Yeah, it might. I'm not here to say it won't. But right now, what AI has, it has this huge information repository and it's receiving a prompt. And that prompt might be inside a longer chat and it might have access to some specialist documents. But the context that an AI has is not even a fraction of a percent of the context that a human being has. And that could be for
And so
better or
I
worse.
would say on this
Yeah.
is, are we too complex anyway? So is AI going to teach
Oh,
us to be more simple? It's the complexity. No, this is like, probably going to turn some people off in this, but it's like the complexity of us is what causes arguments. The complexity of us is what causes, extreme emotions, depression,
true.
anxieties, all the rest of it. World wars,
Okay.
I know,
Yeah.
but yes. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering now if it's that context that actually, as we become more simple through whichever means that is, that's why how much meditation do we bang on about it? And that's to become more simple. So actually, is AI going to
Yeah.
take away the need for us to be so complicated? And people will argue that this is the way that we are, and we need to have all this information, and we need to know it, and we need to be clever. But look at where it's got us in the world. Where has it got? Look at the mess that we're in the world. Relationships are as they are. We always annoy each other
You know,
constantly. World's boring. So maybe the context is far too complicated, and we actually need to
maybe,
simply start.
maybe, you know,
I don't know.
let's pick this up again next week. Cause what I'd say, in reply to you is that, I have a reasonably deep relationship with my AI in terms of information processing and retrieval. And, if I compare that to the relationship that we have, it's just not even in the same ballpark. It couldn't even come a millimeter close to what I
In what
experience with
sense?
you
In what sense, though? Go
in
on.
many, many senses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is
Well,
where
let's pick it
yeah,
up next
to
week.
get in the
Yeah.
way. And if we did have more
Yeah.
of a simple relationship with
Yeah.
something, then we
Yeah.
become less troubled.
Well, and so to your point, there's good and bad, and there's neither
Sure.
good or bad too. And so, you could come to say that, well, the world's in a bit of a mess, or you could say the world is perfectly as it needs to be, and
I get
all
that.
is
Yeah.
all is well. And that's kind of my point of view, and that might seem a little bit discompassionate given what's going on, but I think we need these challenges, and um, there's
We need them till
immense
we don't anymore, right? And I think that's the thing. We're
right.
constantly trying to improve. And are we now trying to improve to be something a little bit more kind of healthy,
Well, let's
let's
pick it
say?
up next week. This
Yeah.
is gonna be a good thread, and I've got a few that I want to come back to if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want
No
to
worries.
talk about with this connection and loneliness, specifically. I want to talk about this sort of phenomenon of loneliness as being reported as just through the roof. And so, I think it was something like 40%, 40 plus percent of people are reporting loneliness. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, well, that could be a reason to reach for the AI more than what one might if they weren't lonely. But then I was
Mhm.
thinking also about this phenomena of people just choosing Netflix for the last 10 years over perhaps, say, going to a dinner party with a friend, or a date, or a family gig. And I wonder if you want to talk into that a little bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, and I think this is the thing. It's like,
You just watch Netflix.
we could sit there. I've never had a Netflix account actually. Um, but I think it's mine's more podcast, right? That's more my kind of thing. But I definitely say that it is this thing where, we go human connection, and we really get quite up, we might get quite upset about this again, because this is something that is socially conditioned into us. If we actually sat there
Mm,
individually and thought about all of the humans in our life, how many of them do we genuinely want to have connection time with? How many of them actually annoy us a little bit? And if it was a choice of go round to your mother-in-law's, or your mate that's a bit annoying or whatever, and that talks and talks and talks, and you can't get a word in edgeways, if that's the choice, or sit at home and watch a really good film, or a good podcast, let's say, or a good educational something in whatever you're interested in, where you can learn, where are you going to get the most benefits? Going because you've got to go, human connection is so much more important. We're going to sit there and wind myself up in the face of them and get anxious or get angry or whatever it is. Or I'm going to sit at home and my nervous system is going to be in a much calmer state because I'm just entranced in something really, good, whatever that is for you that you're watching. And I think that's where we just go with the language of being entranced in what everyone's talking, and that's what we should be saying because that's what the other person says. But
yeah.
if you actually get into someone's world with that, as I've done many times, and I go, well, tell me about that, what's it? And then they'll start to actually realize that what they're saying isn't necessarily true for them, but it's what they think they should be saying, or they've got an idealized version of what human connection is, and they're deleting all of those human connections that they don't actually want to be around at all. So I think it's
Right.
kind of getting real with ourselves. And what I see mostly with
Okay,
people,
yeah.
it's about balance. At the moment, yeah,
Mhm.
sometimes I want to spend some time with people, and other times I want to sit on my phone or watch Netflix or get the AI to
Yeah.
give me some, whatever it is. And I think that's rather than it being as black and white as it's either humans or is this, it's like,
Yeah.
what's more true? And usually we
Yeah.
want some sort of
Yeah.
variety, some sort of balance, some sort of difference, where we're like, I've had enough time with that person, actually I just want to sit on my own, and if I zone out with my phone, then that's what I'm going to do.
Right. And so is the implication that, yeah, of course, AI will replace human connection to some degree, in some
Technology
balance
already
that's
has. It
Yeah, of
already has,
course.
right? You
Yeah,
can't say that it
yeah,
hasn't. It already has
yeah,
for how many years, the phones have been
yeah. I
around.
buy that totally.
Television, I mean, God, it's like,
Yeah,
we're saying television is so much different because you've got the screen in your face. But actually, I mean, I grew up sitting in front of the TV a lot, and it was fine back then, right? And I know that people
yeah.
say, but it's different now because it's like, and I'm like, well, we just used to watch the same film 20 million times. Now you can watch different things. But screen time is probably the same as, what people get judged
So
on now.
I love it. So let's go to a little bit of a different context with a similar theme. So the whole connection piece. And as I was thinking about what you shared on your YouTube, I was thinking about how companies spend multiple millions of dollars on employee engagement. And we also have these big things around, everybody's got to return to work. You got to be in the office 5 days a week because we get more stuff done when we're together and when we're physically, in proximity. And yet the data would seem to suggest right now that we actually get more done when we're working remotely. And, there's always going to be differences of opinion, in differences in the science and differences in lived experience. But I'm really, really curious that companies are pouring millions and millions of dollars into employee engagement, and that's predicated on a need for human connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I wonder whether we're missing something there. And I'm keeping it pretty broad at the moment.
Yeah,
Are we
yeah.
missing something in that?
Well, from talking to people, I think we've asked a few of our clients as well about this.
Mm,
Again, I think what I've heard back from a lot of people, and I say, oh, do you prefer being in the office or do you have all this time at home? And what most people will say again is they like a bit of both. Yeah, if
mm,
they're at home too much, they don't say this, but they're doing their own heading, right? That's
right.
essentially what's happening. If they're in the office too much, they're doing their own head in with all these annoying people asking them questions.
Yeah, I'm glad you went there. Mm,
So what I really hear from most people is, again, it comes back to this balance, and I think we need variety. That's actually,
mm,
what we need, whether it's our phone or it's a person. We want to
right.
change it up. We want a bit of, and I think ultimately with all of this, it's what it always comes down to is what is our relationship with ourselves, again, in the face of these, and what do we want to kind
Mm,
of be distracted in moments. We go, right, we've had enough here. I need something else to distract me now, to change my mood, let's say. And if that's going home, getting out of the office, then that's what it is. But if I'm at home too much, I want to get back in the office. It's like we need these change
mm,
of environments in order to change our state a lot of the time. It's kind of
love it.
that internal thing. We're relying on that external in order to change up that internal, but we don't necessarily realize it. We think that the
Yeah, I
environment
love
is,
that you've shared that.
yeah.
I love that you've shared that. So, if we think about that and we build on the employee engagement piece, then with your frame around our mind runs, it creates all kinds of stuff in it, and for most people, 70% of it is pretty toxic. That's what evidence would suggest. It's what we see in our coaching, and so we've got this internal dialogue going on where we're suffering ourselves, and we're hoping we can drug or meditate ourselves away from it, right? But if we go with this for a minute, then you could take the point of view that some people might come to work in order to self-soothe through connecting with others, and then some people might actually be self-irritated through connecting with others and coming into work, and it could even fall into introversion and extroversion. And so it's really interesting if we look at AI as a self-soothing device, and it's not really, unless you tell it that you want to be challenged, it's really acting as a self-soother, and picking up the gaps in your ability to know yourself and the world. Yourself from an AI coaching perspective, and the world from, let's say, an information or facts or knowledge perspective. And so, I think it's what you put on the table is a really, really helpful frame. AI as a self soother almost, and a
Yeah, yeah,
regulator of that internal mind state.
yeah.
And yeah, I don't know whether you want to say anything
Well,
along
I
that
would
thread
say, yeah, and that I would say as well, for now, if that's what people are
for
using it
now.
for. But I think it's like
Yeah.
anything. You buy yourself a new car, you get yourself a new
Mm.
partner. there's a time limit on it all, in some ways.
Right.
And I think and this is what it comes down to again, if we're too excited, if we're too in love, if we're too attached to anything, it will inevitably go the other way at some point. So the higher we're excited by it, and
I love your fatalism. I don't share that.
let's I'll ask you about AI in a little while's time. But it's that thing. If you can just take it like with anything, if you kind of use these things as you use them and you're in balance with them and you're using them, which most of us don't do. We want to get excited about stuff. We want to, so mostly it's like this is no different to having a relationship, right? The honeymoon period with any friends, your new partner, at some point it starts to kind of not be as exciting as it was at the start. Our stuff
Sure,
starts.
that's human nature, regardless of what the relation. Yeah, I do buy that.
Yeah,
And
and
and,
it's
and
going to
then
be that thing where it's like with anything, as
it's
we
going to be
define
that for
anything,
AI.
there's a good, there's a bad, it's just gonna,
Yeah,
it's the same as anything. Is it good or is it
and
bad?
then
It's like, yeah.
I think there might be a couple of movements. AI might get a bit more sophisticated in its moral complexity, and it might learn how to productively and compassionately challenge a person. And then if it looks more like a human, then we're probably likely to suffer ourselves in the same way as we would with a human relationship. And then on the other side of
Even
that,
with
I'm
a
really
digital one,
curious.
even
Yeah,
when it's
that's
not
what I mean.
like a human, same. Even if you're
Same, same.
engaging with your phone, if it's not giving you what you want it to give you, or you're
Yeah,
going to get annoyed with it potentially if that's in your personality structure
actually.
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to go a step beyond that though, and I just want to put a couple of contexts in. Let's say we're beyond the honeymoon phase, right? And we've been together for 5 years or whatever it is, and you're standing there with another human being, and you might be experiencing the flow of love. And so, this is where I personally and impersonally, get a little bit challenged by the notion that AI will replace that. A genuine heartfelt moment, a genuine um, deep seeing or recognition of another, a transcendent experience with another,
But
a
you
moment
don't need
of
anything in front of you to do that. It's all you. So you
that's
can do that
correct.
with you could do that with a flower. I mean, you probably do. So I just don't. And if you've got
Just
some
saying,
robot in 5 years' time that looks much better looking than most human beings, you can fall in love with that like you do a puppy, like you do. It's no different from.
right.
So I know people will continue to argue this until they have their own experience of it, maybe, and then they'll still try and argue it because it's really wrong to be in love with a robot.
Well,
I don't.
yeah, I feel like there's an energetic quality to a sentient being that's not present with a lump of metal, and they are all energy at their base.
It's our
And
stuff a lot of the time that we are
sure,
thinking is something between us.
yeah.
We
Anyway,
become
we don't
one
want to
with
go.
it.
We don't want to go too spiritual,
I don't
but
want to be part of this conversation.
yes.
That's what I mean,
Okay.
Andrew. If we're talking about it not at that level, then yes, that is very true. That people will think that they're never going to be able to fall in love with, say, a robot. But at the later stages of development, if anyone knows about that then doesn't, the truth of that is completely different to at the love
Well,
level
yeah,
that
and I would say, you're seeing multiple truths at the same time. And so, for example, for me, I understand that, at a certain level, nothing's any different. And also at the same level, I can't see this body copulating with a robot. And I can see this body copulating with a sentient human being. And so
I think
both are
there'll be a
true.
lot of people having sex with robots. I have no
Oh, I'm
doubt.
sure there will be.
I have
Yeah.
no doubt that's going to be the norm, and we are the old fuckers at the moment. We people watching this, we're the old people, and as the younger generations come in, it's going to be more normalized. I have no doubt that is what's going to be happening. And we, as the old people, we're so set and stuck in our ways, we can't possibly think that there's other, perspectives and other. But if we really zoom out of this and get beyond ourselves, and all that we know, for centuries, people would be looking at us now and us on our mobile phones, and that would just be completely ridiculous to them. It's the same thing as us looking into the future and seeing what's happening will be ridiculous to us, but this is evolution.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And
So
we don't know. And yeah, we can only say, we can't say anything with any certainty, can we really? Now, I have one last question, and it might be a little bit of a lead into next week as well. So I'm really curious to know where you go with this. And again, please tell me if I've taken this the wrong way in terms of the main thrust of your point of view. But the main thrust of your point of view is that, we have a self, and the self has all its faults and failings, and it's through the mind we often think ourselves into negativity and suffering, and we seek some kind of self-soothing or connection to allay our own dismay. Sometimes it works, it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's with a human, sometimes it's with alcohol or whatever it is for that person, Netflix, whatever it is. But essentially what you're saying is that, if I understand you correctly, that it all comes back to self. And if we're connected within self, then there's no necessity for another. Have I got that right?
Choice, right? Not necessity,
Choice.
but choice. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. And there's no, okay. Yeah. All right. There's nuance in that, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
So here's the question for you. And, if we want to explore it next week, that's totally cool too. When two human beings, let's just take AI out of it for a second, and we might bring it back in a tick. When two human beings, come into relating, do those two human beings in your mind create a third space? One which is not either self nor either other, but a third space. I'm curious as to your perspective
Well,
on
what do you mean by that? It's obviously something that you're thinking, so you go for it.
Well, I 100% believe there is.
Go.
And, I believe to bring everything back purely to the self is, has some limitations. It has some blind spots. And so, there are two people with two sentient minds. And yes, from an integrated perspective, we're seeing the other through ourselves. And so the parts we don't like about ourselves, or that we do like about the other, or whatever it is, we're seeing that. And, at the mature stages of consciousness, we're not falling out with the other because of those. There might still be difficulties in relating. That's totally cool. We're not falling out with the other. But what we're doing is we're seeing the mirror, but we're also seeing a third object that represents the unity of the two in interaction. And that's a very specific quality of
You could have
relating
that
with someone.
an AI as well, and that's
100%. Yeah.
So it's like, it doesn't matter whether it's two of you, whether it's 10 of you, whether it's you and a robot, you and an AI, it's still
Yeah. Right.
that could be
And
applicable.
so then, next week I'd really love to explore this third space a little more with you. I think a lot of people that are on the spiritual path can, bypass the notion of a third space and bypass the notion of another entirely. And I get it. But I'd love to explore that a little bit with you. And I'd also love to explore another key to this whole AI and connection piece, which is that a lot of the therapy and psychology and work that was done over the last couple of 100 years, when all of this has become pretty famous now. People didn't ever used to have a therapist or a coach or any of this, and now it became all the rage. And a lot of people are having coaches, whether they're AI or humans. There's really two different sides of this mirror. One is the notion of connection. And so that's feeling like you're bonded with another, perhaps, and everybody will define it really differently. And then the other side of that is recognition. And so recognition is not connection. And, I probably won't go into that today, and you and I can have a think about what we want to do next week. But one of the things that I want to talk about is it's almost never discussed, which is recognition. It's not connection. It's recognizing another in self. And it's actually, attachment theory and a lot of the things that are really popular now are based on connection models. and they don't take into account recognition. And so, I'd love to explore that a little bit in the context of AI next week as well. We'll have a chat to prep before that. But yeah, anyway,
So
I
I wanted
don't
to
think.
add to that whilst we're talking about that, because I think this is really key, something that I've noticed a lot. So whether we're having an AI coach or a therapist or whatever, or we've got an in-person one, or we're doing both, because I'm seeing that with a lot of people. And this is where I see the kind of, I think there's what I see is people are getting a lot of overwhelm of information, because you're going on AI and AI is giving you everything. It's literally like people are coming to me with
Yes.
sheets and sheets and sheets of stuff. And then it's like, then we come into a session and they've got these sheets of things. And I'm like, well, I mean, do we need to have a session? You've got, but they still want to go through and talk about this stuff. And some of them, of course, will just be overwhelmed and confused. They're like, there's so much here. How do I know what's true?
Right.
Right. And this is
Right.
it. And this is where what do we coach on in that session? Luckily, is a point of trust. You have been thrown out everything from the internet, from the AI possible. You could go down any of those routes and make any of those your truth. You could do
Right.
anything. People that more, what we call it, more internally referent, they kind of have more of an internal trust, that compass of trust, will, take it a little bit more maybe lightly, and they might pull a couple of things out. Other people are genuinely like, what is true anymore, because they're being blasted with every single kind of therapy and every single, there's so many different versions of obviously having therapy, having coaching, and now they're getting all of them. And it kind of like, there is a part of, when you see a therapist, you're going to see one person, they've got one modality of work potentially that they're working towards. It's a bit less complicated and confusing. When you're getting all that stuff out of there, it can be quite difficult. And I think, and to kind of look at that as well, to me, is going, well, why do you need to be here if you've got all that? And they are there because there's this confusion going on for them. And then we are working on their
100%.
internal trust. And then I'm
Right.
looking at that as well, going, I've got a different perspective on some of what they're saying. I've got a relationship with you. I know certain parts about you. But again, it's like, this is
There's
where all
that
this stuff is
context.
going to get. Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah. From
Yeah.
that perspective, for sure.
So
But
just
it
on
is one
that,
of
I
those
think
things
it's
where
it's really beautiful share. And, I'll just loop recognition into it in a moment, because this is where I think we get ahead next week. I love your share, because, I coach myself with AI. But, the interesting thing about the way that I coach myself is that I'm coaching myself on parts that I cannot see, for starters. And having done this for a handful of years now, I know how to prompt it. And so the expertise, and, I'm not talking about, our expert stage, Orange, but the expertise and the context that's held within here now, in terms of what are the right questions to ask it, and what exactly am I looking for, and how do I want it presented, and da 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 da. That's all a context that a person that's using the tool that doesn't have that context, they'll get a radically different result. And so, I've started producing some pretty crazy reports for clients, looking at, for example, their sales calls, and telling them about how something that happened at, or not telling, but offering them about something that might have happened when they were 5, now showing up in their tonality and their fear of rejection or their lack of self-worth on a sales call. And I'm like, you don't need a different system, and you don't need a sales coach to come in and give you the copy paste off the shelf. You actually need to work on your fear of rejection. And so, this stuff's available now, but you got to know how to prompt it.
I
And
think
this
this
is
is where
why,
it comes back to, again, nothing is ever coming to save us, right? We've still got to have some level of something, or else we're not going to know how to prompt it correctly. And I think that's this thing, and we've got this over reliance on whether it is your coach or your therapist or whatever, whatever it is. It's like, we've got to start to realize it's nothing that's doing it to us, and there's got to be something within us to work together with whatever we are choosing to work with, rather than having this over reliance on any of this stuff. I think that's
totally agree. Love it. Now, is there anything that you can recall from your conversation on the original podcast that you'd like to share with our listeners, or anything that we've kind of missed? We went fairly deep on some topics there. Is there anything that you feel you want to bring?
No, I don't think so. Everyone's welcome to go and watch it. If you just click on my Facebook or LinkedIn, you'll see the links down there. So feel free to go
Yeah.
ahead and and have a listen. But yeah, I think that's everything.
Yeah, cool. And so I think, for the audience, if you're listening to this on behalf of yourself as a person, realize that AI is just another
Or
object
as
in
an
your
AI,
awareness,
because you might
or
read
as an
my email
AI.
afterwards, right? Isn't that what you do?
Yeah, I'll get the transcript and I'll put it through and I'll say, "What did you think of yourself?"
Exactly. Give me a pat on the back for
um,
what I said, please.
I think our first mutual coaching session that I put through the AI said that we were magic. And I thought, bang on.
Thank you. I needed that. I didn't know that for myself.
So I
I
think
mean, it's
if you're
dangerous,
watching
right?
this,
But if you are someone that does need a lot of the external
of course, I'm
validation from
joking, man.
others, but it's
Yeah,
kind of samey, right? It's no different.
yeah,
It's yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, AI is another object in our awareness. And, you can look at your own experience of yourself and look to where you reach for connection with certain objects or people or places or, uh, you know, things or experiences. It's an opportunity for you to just step back and say, hey, how's AI slotting into my world right now? What's the nature of my connection with it? What do I need it for? What am I dependent on it for? I saw a guy that lost his Claude account this morning and he posted on LinkedIn and he was devastated. It was like his daughter had been run over by a train. Do you know what I mean? He was
Mhm.
devastated.
Yeah, it's the same as
And you
if
can
someone loses their
understand it.
Instagram or their Facebook. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
much
it's
on
part
there.
of the identity. And so I think on a personal level, it's an opportunity for us to step back and reflect for where does it fit into our life and what purpose and meaning does it serve and provide. And then from an organizational perspective, everyone's running, running in to try and implement this stuff. And, it's an opportunity to step back and look at all of these initiatives that you have around, mental health, employee well-being, return to work. There's so many of these days, psychological safety, et cetera, et cetera. And actually just ask yourselves as an organization, what problem are we really trying to solve? And, I think often that's a little bit unclear. And, unless we know what problem we're trying to solve, we don't know whether AI will be it. And so, I think there's a couple of things that I'd just love the audience to chew on before our next week, if that's cool. And
Yeah,
anything that you'd like to add to
no,
lead us to the
all good,
close?
all
Just want
good.
to say thank you.
Same here.
Brilliant chat. And look forward to posting this. And if you want to come to our event on August the 8th, link in the comments below. Really hope to see you there. We're going to go real deep on this stuff and give massive value. So big love to you, Anita, and looking forward to